If a little green is good, more is even better. Now, back to Green is Good with John Shigarian and Mike Brady.
Welcome back to Green is Good. And Mike, wasn't Brian Welch both inspirational and motivational?
You know, I was just thinking, John, how incredible. I mean, he made such a case for optimism in any area of your life, but especially when he puts it in a global environmental perspective. I mean, you look like you're glowing, John. You look like you feel just really positively alive. I know I do after hearing Brian talk.
I do, and I feel so positive, and I'm so excited to do this show with you. And Mike, I just also have to give a shout out. We have listeners that write to us from around the world and listen to us on the iTunes network, besides the Clear Channel Radio Network in China, Korea, France, and beyond. And I just want to say hello to them and thank you for listening to Green is Good all the time. You got to listen now to the second half of the show. We've got Michel Nischan, who's going to come on and talk about Wholesome Wave, a great new concept. So listen to this commercial, then come on back to Green is Good.
If a little green is good, more is even better. Now, back to Green is Good with John Shigarian and Mike Brady.
Welcome back to Green is Good, and we're so honored to have with us today Michel Nischan, who's the founder and chief executive officer of Wholesome Wave. Welcome to Green is Good, Michel Nischan.
Thanks, John. It's great to be here. Appreciate you having me on.
Hey, before we get into Wholesome Wave, I just have to share with our listeners, you are one of the rock stars of the green eating revolution. You've been named and honored as one of the Huffington Post game changers. You have a restaurant. We're going to talk about what the Obama administration is doing with you. You rock, and we are so honored to have you on with us today.
Oh man, listen, it's great to be on, and I appreciate the kindness. I just love staying busy because it keeps me out of trouble.
Hey, so Michel, a couple of things. First of all, we always love to share with our listeners. We want our guests to share with our listeners the journey. You are a co-founder of Wholesome Wave with Michael Batterberry and Gus Schumacher. How did you come up with this idea for Wholesome Wave? And for our listeners out there, if you have your iPad open, laptop, desktop, go to wholesomewave.org to check out the great things that Michel is doing. Share with us the journey.
Well, the journey, John, started years ago. I've been a local food chef from the very beginning. I've been a chef for about 30 years. Both my parents were farmers, so when I became a chef, I really wanted to buy from farmers because I felt as a chef I would be giving folks the best food, only to find out that the farmers had gone away, that the opportunity to buy from local farmers was quickly becoming a thing of the past. And I really made it a point in my career to support local producers from the very beginning. But about halfway through, about 16 years ago, my son Chris, who is now 22, was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And it was a real wake-up call for me. At the time, I was running a high-profile restaurant, winning awards, doing all that good stuff.
Right.
Busy, great career trajectory, buying as local as I could, seeing some movement. But when Chris became ill and I started studying diabetes, I started learning about type 2 diabetes, which is the most prevalent. I mean, honestly, if we diagnosed everybody that's actually suffering from the disease in the U.S., over 40 million people have type 2 diabetes. It's terrible. And it's most prevalent in these seriously underserved urban and rural communities. So right around the time that I was realizing that as a white tablecloth chef, I wasn't doing enough, because if every white tablecloth restaurant tomorrow in the country went farm to table tomorrow, it wouldn't even make a blip on the radar screen, because we represent probably less than 2% of the overall dining industry, the eating out industry. But I also realized that in these seriously underserved urban and rural communities, that these folks that were suffering from diabetes were suffering because they didn't have access and affordability to choose the kind of food I was serving in my restaurant. I just felt this terrible pang to do something about it. So I was very almost frustrated to the point of leaving the business, and that's when Michael Batterberry, who was a mentor of mine, said, Michel, you should do something about this. I was at the time a board member of Chefs Collaborative, which is a chefs organization working on sustainable food system choices, but again, at the time was mostly white tablecloth restaurants. So Michael introduced me to Gus Schumacher, who at that time was the Undersecretary of Foreign Agricultural Services in the USDA under the Clinton administration. He said, this guy feels the same way you do, that if you don't make sustainable food available to everybody, that it'll never come to scale. So Gus and I became fast friends, started goofing around with some really cool little nonprofit projects, and started coming in contact with these communities and learning that people do want better food choices for their family, that they are interested in things like fruits and vegetables, that they want to be able to they're culturally connected in many cases to cooking, and those who aren't know that if they could learn how to cook and they could afford better food, that they could provide a better life for their families. So contrary to popular American belief, we found it just not to be true. So I founded Wholesome Wave June 2007, and Gus and I agreed from the very beginning with Michael that one of the hallmarks of our program would be to provide affordability in these underserved communities, to demonstrate that these folks do want to feed their families well, and that in doing so that they can provide financial support for our farmers who are also struggling and potentially become the heroes of a changed food system. So that's the history in as short a nutshell as I could make it.
Sure. And so share with us your mission. What is Wholesome Wave's mission? We're on your website. It's a gorgeous website. Again, for our listeners out there, please go and check out Michel's beautiful website, www.wholesomewave.org. What's the mission? Like, what are you trying to achieve on a regular basis?
Well, we have our mission statement,
right.
But to put it in direct personal terms, what we're trying to do is prove that where access and affordability meet in these forgotten communities, that change can happen, and that these communities can become meaningful participants in changing our food system to a more local, sustainable, organically based food system that'll be better for the health of the environment, the health of the economy, human health. All of these things will benefit as a result of being able to make positive change, and that these communities can play a lead role in getting that done. We really believe it. We also believe that in doing so, when these folks have the opportunity to make the right food choices, it's going to reduce health care costs, which is something that would benefit the entire nation. So I think the opportunity to have people in these seriously underserved communities actually become heroes of this change could erase a lot of the structural racism and do a lot of healing and go a long way to fix some of the problems and the assumptions that have been so wrong for so long.
I love your tagline here at the top of your website, Nourishing Neighborhoods Across America. That is just so powerful, simple.
I'm glad you love that. We think nourishing is a powerful word.
It is, and so let's, before we go on to the specifics about this wonderful program, Wholesome Wave. I mean, here's something I want our listeners to understand: what you're really accomplishing, how big your movement really has gotten. The Obama administration recently named Wholesome Wave as one of the 5 major strategy groups making a difference in the fight against childhood obesity in its White House Task Force on Childhood Obesity report to the president. Now, come on, that you have talk about changing the world, 1 or 2 or 3 committed human beings changing the world with your business concept and your business venture. Congratulations, but tell us how that came about and what that really means to the Wholesome Wave, how that really gives velocity behind your Wholesome Wave.
Well, it's interesting, John, because what we do in these communities, we raise private money so that we can double the value of existing federal food assistance benefits like SNAP, which is formerly known as food stamps, and WIC, which is a supplemental nutrition assistance program for women, infants, and children, at-risk seniors, et cetera. There are federal benefits that exist that are so thinly spread that there's still not enough for folks to feed their families well. So we go into these communities and provide an incentive. If these folks spend their benefits on whatever they can legally spend them on, that's fine. But if they come to a farmer's market or a farm stand or a CSA and they spend them on locally grown fruits and vegetables, we double their money. So it's an incentive. That what we do then is study that activity. So we survey federal food assistance recipients, we survey the farmers, we track the sales and the redemption rates of the federal benefits at markets that previously accepted benefits but didn't do incentives, what happens to the redemption rates, and then what happens when the incentives go away. And we take all of this information, and we have found that it is absolutely proving that people want better food, that they're interested in supporting local farmers and local businesses, that it's important that they see these markets and the engagement and the social activity that happens at markets as something that's benefiting their community and is allowing them to fully participate. When we've seen incredible redemption rate increases in these federal food assistance benefits when the incentives come in times where some of our nonprofit partners have run out of money and the incentives went away, the food assistance consumers continued to come to the market and shop. Our average redemption rate increase is almost 400%. The drop-off is only 20%. So there's still a 320% net increase in the purchasing activity at these markets when the incentives go away. So our data we share with Washington, and that's Gus's kudos. Gus, instead of taking a multi-million-dollar lobbying job, he was the third highest position in USDA. If the secretary and the deputy secretary were in a plane crash, Gus would have been the Secretary of Agriculture. So he was that high up the food chain. He could have gotten a lucrative lobbying job, but he's so devoted to seeing that people in underserved communities can have access to good, healthy, locally grown foods that he chose to do this work. So he still has that full access. So we have access to all of the top federal agencies, directly to the undersecretaries, the appointed, the elected officials, the administrative staff, and we share and celebrate this great news. And in sharing and celebrating the great news and putting real bona fide statistics behind it, we've been able to achieve some grant and administrative level policy change. So I think it's awesome. I believe it's Gus's work that's led to those great things that I think the Obama administration couldn't help but take notice because of the great work that Gus has been doing for us in Washington. So it was a great win for us to be included, and we're humbled by it. And it's, I think, largely responsible for why, after just 4 short years, we're now in 30 states and almost 300 markets deploying these programs.
30 states and 300 markets.
Yes.
Wow. Congratulations. And talk about a little bit of the one thing I want to understand, because I see it on the site, but I want to understand it from your perspective, and I want our listeners to understand it. The double value coupon. Explain that a little bit more so our listeners who go to your site can hear it from you how that works.
Right. So in a market, we deploy through nonprofit partners. We have 50 of them now.
Right.
These are nonprofits in these communities who love their communities, want to make the lives of their communities better, improve the lives, the lifestyle. Food access is always a big issue for them. So we work through these communities who've already established trust. They live there. They're well known there. They have the respect. So we don't like to go in and hang up our shingle. So we deploy through these nonprofits, and we basically give them the seed money to start the incentive programs. We provide them with technical assistance and training, teach them how to do the data collection, and then help them write grants to get matching funds to support the programs, and then they're off and running. So then they have money in their bank. So a SNAP recipient will come to a farmer's market. The nonprofit acts like the cashier. They'll swipe the SNAP or the food stamp card. If a recipient would like to swipe their card for $10, then they're given $20 in tokens, and the tokens are like cash. So they spend the cash at the farmer's market. The farmers come at the end of the day, turn in the tokens, and they get a check in return so that they don't have to wait for their money. So it works like the regular course of business in a farmer's market area. In the farmers market arena, in that world, they get money the same day or within a week. They don't have to wait for it, but the consumers go and swipe their card and basically get double their money for fresh fruits and vegetables.
Got it. So talk about two things. Since you are a farmers market expert, first of all, give your top tip. I want our listeners who love farmers markets, and they're growing across America, the whole movement. What's your top tip for shopping at a farmers market?
My top tip for shopping at a farmer's market is show up.
Oh, okay. I like that.
I mean, it's interesting because a lot of people say they want farmer's markets, and then, no, I don't have time to go to the farmer's market today. And the interesting thing about a lot of markets is that people forget that farming is a 7-day-a-week, often 15-hour-a-day job just doing the farming. To get a farmer to leave his farm to go and set up a market, which they need to do because they really benefit from those retail sales, it often makes the difference for them as to whether they skip a couple of mortgage payments in the winter or not. Yeah. So when they take that trouble, it's only 1 day a week in many cases. So it's really important that people who are interested in farmers markets, believe in local food, make it a ritual to mark on their calendar what that market day is and show up. What they'll find is that farmers, just like I'm in the restaurant business, I've been a chef for 30 years. I know who my regular customers are, and boy, do I appreciate them. And I let them know how much I appreciate them, and farmers do the same thing. So when you really want to have that type of direct relationship with a farmer where they'll help you solve your gardening problems. They'll give you recipes, they'll give you advice, they'll if they know you're falling on hard times, they'll give you a discount. It's that relationship can only be built if you show up, and if you show up regularly. They will get to know who you are, they will appreciate it, and then you have a vibrant marketplace.
And Michel, you bring up such a great point about the whole local aspect, but it occurred to me, too, that if you make it a point to go shopping on that appointed day whenever the farmer's market closest to you is actually going on, you are also going to be realizing some energy savings, aren't you?
Oh, you're absolutely right, Mike. I mean, when you look at how it's interesting. They haven't fully cleaned the data yet, but we're privy to the farmers market survey, and there's a very good chance that it's going to become official soon that there are now more than 7,000 farmers markets in the United States. So in many states, they're literally everywhere. And when you can have a market that's that's within walking distance or a short drive, and the great thing about the food at farmers markets are that you can buy a week's worth of stuff, and after a week in your fridge, it's going to be in better condition than anything that you're going to buy at a grocery store. Most of the stuff in the grocery system goes through regional redistribution warehouses. Yeah. Even if you're in Massachusetts, if you're buying from a grocery store where the regional redistribution warehouses in Vermont, the Massachusetts food goes to Vermont, gets checked, tagged, PLU'd, packaged, and then sent back to Massachusetts. So, the food at a farmer's market, and forget about the stuff that comes from California or Guatemala, but when you look at the fact that the farmer's market is right there, you're reducing fossil fuel usage not only of your own, but you're buying product that has not made those rounds back and forth to warehouses, et cetera, et cetera. So, there have been a lot of folks arguing that, well, you look at all these small trucks of the farmers having to go to the market, that's fossil fuel. Yeah, it's fossil fuel, but I think when you look at the market and the grocery store trips and you put everything into perspective, there's some energy savings there.
Michel, then there has to be energy savings there. But you talk about being in 30 states now and 300 markets, which in 4 years is just simply incredible, no doubt. Are you planning to expand to more farmers markets and to outside of the farmer market network?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that, John. We're very, very interested in what the implications are for full-time public markets. The difficulty with we would love, for instance, to be able to have incentives available in the food system at any place that sells fruits and vegetables, a grocery store. One of the things that we sadly are very aware of because of the work that we do is that most people on food stamps actually shop late at night because, contrary to the popular belief of some of the folks that are currently in office and recently elected, trying to portray people on food stamps as wasteful abusers of federal handouts. These are folks that are already working 2 and 3 part-time jobs. Most of them shop after 10 o'clock at night at grocery stores that are open 24 hours because it's the only time that they can do their shopping. So farmers markets aren't open late at night. They're not open 7 days a week. They're open for a shorter window period of time. But they're the waivers. To allow that to happen, there are a variety of implications of favoring one retail product over another, favoring one population over another, unfair trade advantage, the opportunity for lawsuits, and the opportunity for regulatory clashes in traditional retail formats where basically the premise is that once any retail food is made it past the back dock of a retail food establishment, all products are created and should be treated equally. It's just too difficult right now. So we're exploring how we can interact with public markets that sell locally grown fruits and vegetables. We're looking at the potential for community-owned grocery co-ops to see if there are any implications there. But more than anything, we do believe not only do we have the doubling, we also have a fruit and vegetable prescription program that we're piloting this year where we've raised enough money in 8 communities to give doctors at health clinics enough benefit to prescribe enough resource so an entire at-risk family can increase their consumption of fruits and vegetables a serving per day per person, while because it's a prescription, they come back once a month and they're measured for height, weight, and blood pressure and BMI, body mass index. We believe this is important because there is a provision in Title VI of the health bill that allows the government to start reimbursing healthcare providers to provide measurable prevention rather than just reimbursing them for providing treatment. So the implications for the business plans of healthcare insurance companies are huge. So, wouldn't it be lovely if somebody who's on universal health care from an underserved community goes to a doctor and they say, you're pre-diabetic, if you don't lose 50 pounds, change your diet and change your exercise, you're going to be diabetic within a year. And your life expectancy is going to be cut by a third, and then can say, and we can help you. Here's your prescription for the fruits and vegetables you need to change your diet. I mean, the impact of that on the local agricultural economy would be huge. We believe the impact on reducing health care costs would be dramatic, and that it would constitute a program eventually that would have the chance of paying for itself. We do a variety of these styles of programs also to prove that in these communities, when you provide the affordability, it creates food commerce. So the opportunity to start rebuilding these communities through food businesses that could actually accept these benefits if they become a permanent part of the American landscape, that's huge. John, one of the things that most people don't understand is that this year alone, just in food stamp benefits,
right,
$82 billion in 1 year.
Unreal.
So imagine if we could just get 5% of that to go to locally grown fruits and vegetables. It would be millennia beyond the cash business that farmers markets do right now. So the opportunity to set up and build food businesses around that type of healthy food commerce are real.
Right. Well, Michel, we're almost out of time here. I want to ask you for any last comments you have to share with our listeners before we have to sign off. You're always invited to come back. We always want to hear updates on the amazing story of Wholesome Wave. Please share any last comments you have in the last minute or so.
Yeah, I appreciate that, John. I just, my message to your listeners, first of all, the fact that they're listening, they're all just doing a great job, obviously. Whatever they could do just to understand that folks in these communities want the same things they do. They want to feed their families better. In our survey, we surveyed over 700 SNAP consumers, food stamp consumers. The number one reason why they shop at the markets is quality of produce. Number two is that they accept SNAP benefits with the discount. Number three is supporting local farmers, and price with the incentives is number six. So when you look at that, they want the same thing that all Americans want, and the best thing that we can do as a population is understand that people in underserved communities are just like everybody else. The only thing that they don't have that a lot of everybody else have is actually the choice to make that choice. So it's an interesting thing, and anything that they can do in their communities to support their farmers markets that are near underserved communities by volunteering or donating, we encourage you to engage directly in your local community through your farmers and reach these folks and give them a chance to raise their kids well.
Well, thank you so much. And for our listeners out there, again, get involved and see all the great work Michel's doing, and you could and get inspired. Please go to www.wholesomewave.org. Michel Nischan, you are a visionary Epicurean icopreneur and truly living proof that green is good.
Thanks a million, John.
That was a mouthful.